You wake up already tense, not panicked, just off. Your body knows before your mind does. Something that used to work doesn't anymore. The routine, the distraction, the voice you used to quiet yourself. You try it anyway. Nothing settles. Your thoughts feel louder, but also clearer. And that's what scares you. You notice things you didn't notice before. Reactions, patterns, old impulses rising without permission. You tell yourself you're slipping, that you were more stable before, that whatever progress you thought you made was imaginary. Your chest tightens, not from danger, but from exposure. There's no emergency, no obvious threat. Yet your system is restless, searching for something familiar to grab onto. You reach for an old habit. It doesn't soothe you. It just feels smaller now, almost embarrassing. That's when the doubt hits. Why is this harder now? Why do you feel less protected, less buffered, less numb? You assume something is wrong. You assume you broke yourself by looking too closely, by feeling too much, by letting go of something that once kept you functional. You don't call it growth. You call it instability. You call it regression. You call it a mistake. But notice this. You're not confused in the same way anymore. You're aware. And awareness doesn't arrive gently. This discomfort didn't come from weakness. It came from losing the ability to hide from yourself. And that loss feels like danger when you don't yet know what replaces it. Do you want me to continue with the next point? You were taught that growth is supposed to feel stabilizing, that when you're doing things right, life should feel calmer, clearer, easier to manage. You believed that if you followed the rules self-awareness, healing, self-control, you would be rewarded with peace. So you did what you were told. You reflected. You questioned your patterns. You stopped numbing as much. You tried to be honest with yourself. And instead of relief, things felt worse. Your old coping mechanisms stopped working. The distractions felt hollow. The identities you relied on being strong, being functional, being over it, started to crack. That wasn't what you were promised. You were promised clarity, not confusion. Strength, not instability. Relief, not this strange inner friction where nothing familiar fits anymore. So you assumed you failed, that you misunderstood the process, that maybe you went too far, dug too deep, broke something that was holding you together. This is the lie no one names. The belief that growth is supposed to feel safe. The belief that discomfort means you're doing it wrong. The belief that stability is the reward for good intentions. Reality doesn't work like that. Psychology doesn't reward virtue. The nervous system doesn't care about your goals. It only responds to alignment. When old coping mechanisms dissolve, there is always a gap. And that gap feels like loss before it feels like strength. You weren't punished for growing. You were exposed by it. The system didn't turn against you. It simply stopped protecting illusions that no longer fit. If you thought awareness would feel comforting, that was never promised. It was only promised to be real. There's a reason this phase isn't talked about plainly, because it contradicts what people want to believe about change. Long before modern self-help softened the language, thinkers understood this clearly. In psychology, in biology, in ancient philosophy. The idea was simple, but uncomfortable. Systems resist reorganization. In neuroscience, when the brain drops an old pattern, it doesn't immediately replace it. There's a destabilization window. Old neural pathways weaken before new ones strengthen. Function decreases before it improves. Carl Jung spoke about this bluntly. He warned that increased consciousness does not bring comfort. It brings confrontation. He called it the encounter with the shadow, not because it's evil, but because it was previously unseen. This is why awareness feels dangerous at first. You are no longer protected by unconsciousness. You see your reactions forming. You notice impulses before they act. You feel emotions before they numb out. Most people retreat here, not because they're incapable, but because they mistake exposure for damage. Biology doesn't care how you feel about this. Growth in any system creates instability. Muscle tears before it strengthens. Forests burn before they regenerate. Old structures collapse before new ones carry weight. Your mind is no different. What feels like falling apart is often a system losing outdated scaffolding. The mind resists because familiarity once meant survival. Even painful patterns were predictable. Predictability feels like safety to the nervous system. Power was never about avoiding this phase. It was always about understanding it. When you stop interpreting discomfort as failure, you stop fighting the process itself. And when you stop fighting it, energy becomes available for something new to form. You're tired of not knowing where you stand with yourself. Tired of doing the work and feeling less certain instead of more. Tired of waking up with that low-grade tension that never fully explains itself. You don't say it out loud, but you think it. If this is growth, why does it feel like I lost my footing? Why did things feel easier when I wasn't this aware? You miss the version of you that could function without questioning everything. That could rely on habits without dissecting them. That could move through life without constantly noticing the cracks. And that's the frustration no one names. Awareness took away your anesthesia, but it hasn't given you strength yet. You're in between. No longer numb, not yet grounded. This is the most dangerous phase, not because it's harmful, but because it's misleading. It convinces you that retreat would be relief, that going back to old patterns would restore stability. But going back wouldn't be strength. It would just be silence. Here's the truth you need to hear clearly. Nothing has gone wrong. What's happening is a dismantling, not a collapse. The lies you absorbed were simple. That comfort equals health. That ease equals alignment. That discomfort means you took a wrong turn. What you're feeling is the cost of transition. And once you understand that, confusion loses its authority. From here, things stop being vague. There are rules to this phase. There is structure to the instability. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. You'll know exactly why this discomfort exists and how to move through it without losing yourself. Here's the roadmap. You are about to learn the truths most people never realize. These are not comforting slogans. They are perception shifts, tools that quietly change how your mind responds to itself and how the world responds to you as a result. There are 5 principles that govern this phase of growth. 5 laws that, once understood, permanently alter your relationship with discomfort. They aren't tricks. They aren't shortcuts. They are the mechanics of internal authority. Each principle will expose the illusions you've been clinging to. Each principle will force a choice to react as you always have or to rise differently. You will see your old coping patterns for what they were, temporary scaffolds, protective but limiting. You will notice the impulses that used to control you, not to shame yourself, but to recognize them. You will observe the moments where instinct urges retreat and learn to pause instead. By the end of this, the same inner turbulence will feel entirely different. The wave of discomfort that once threatened to sweep you under will now signal that something new is forming. And once you embrace this, there is no going back. Ignorance stops being an option. You can no longer pretend that growth should feel safe. You cannot unsee the mechanics of your own mind. This is the map for navigating the storm. And from here, every step you take is deliberate, not reactive. Principle 1. The economy of exposure. Here's the blunt truth. You cannot grow without feeling what you've suppressed. Your mind hoards emotions the way a vault hoards gold. Pain, fear, frustration, confusion, they sit locked away, protected from your conscious awareness. Old behavior tried to ignore them, to numb them, to convince you that not noticing was safety. Now, exposure is the currency. Each moment you allow yourself to feel without retreating is an investment. The vault opens. You see the old patterns for what they are. You understand what once controlled you. The old you would panic, would seek to repress again. would mistake the emergence of these emotions for failure. The new you pauses, observes, allows release without judgment. Others will notice, not because you brag, not because you perform, because your internal stability radiates outward. Your reactions shift. People sense the difference. Discipline is the generator. Control is internal, calm, sovereign. No aggression required. No frantic effort. Just presence. Every time you endure exposure, you create a new baseline for your nervous system. The previously destabilizing moment becomes familiar. You are training the system to treat discomfort as neutral rather than threatening. This is how you reclaim authority over your own mind. Not by avoiding the storm, but by standing inside it without losing your center. Principle 2. The authority of dissolution. Here's the stark truth. Your old identities, those roles, labels, and masks, were never permanent. They were structures built for survival, often forged in discomfort, fear, or necessity. You clung to them because familiarity felt safe, even if they limited you. You believed strength came from maintaining consistency, from never showing cracks. But now, growth demands their collapse. Old behavior. You reinforced the mask, avoided vulnerability, preserved appearances. New behavior. You let the structure crumble, allowed the false self to dissolve, and watched what emerges underneath. Think of it like tectonic plates. Pressure builds silently beneath the surface. When they shift, the ground shakes. It feels chaotic. It feels unstable. But the movement is the formation of new land, new territory ready to carry weight it never could before. People respond differently when you embody this principle. They no longer see a fixed image. They see someone flexible, aware, and unshakable, because stability is no longer dependent on illusion. Discipline is quiet. Power is calm. It does not come from holding on. It comes from letting go. Each identity that falls away reveals another layer of internal authority. Every familiar habit or pattern that dissolves creates space for growth. Every emotional truth you face without fleeing reinforces your sovereignty. The discomfort is evidence of progress. Your system is reorganizing itself into a stronger, more integrated whole. Principle 3. The gravity of resistance here is the unvarnished reality. Your mind resists change, not because you are weak, but because familiarity was survival. Every old coping mechanism, every impulse you once leaned on, is tethered to safety. Even the ones that hurt you. Old behavior. You fought the discomfort, judged yourself for relapsing, attempted to control the uncontrollable. New behavior. You recognize resistance as a signal, not a failure, and use it as a guide. Think of it like a river carving through rock. The water doesn't fight the stone. It flows, finds the path of least obstruction, reshapes the terrain over time. The pressure is constant. The change is inevitable. When you embody this principle, your nervous system stops reacting automatically. You move from unconscious to conscious, from reactive to sovereign. You observe patterns, pauses, and impulses instead of being swept by them. Others will notice the difference, not as obedience, not as charm, but as presence. You are no longer dictated by old rhythms. You respond with precision, not panic. Power is internal, not performative. It comes from discipline over perception, not aggression over others. Each moment you endure resistance without retreating rewrites the familiar as optional rather than necessary. Discomfort becomes a teacher rather than an enemy. You learn where your grip is too tight, where your assumptions mislead you, and where real strength quietly accumulates. Principle 4. The alchemy of awareness. Here is the uncompromising truth. Growth is not about controlling outcomes. It is about controlling yourself. Your perception, your impulses, your reactions. These are the levers of true authority. Old behavior. You chased comfort, tried to manipulate circumstances, hoped others or the world would stabilize for you. New behavior. You anchor within, observe without judgment, and act only when aligned with internal order. Think of it like a blacksmith shaping steel. The metal resists, bends, and threatens to break. The smith does not fight the resistance with brute force. He tempers it, directs it, transforms it. The strength is forged inside, unseen, and becomes unbreakable. When you embody this principle, discomfort no longer dictates action. The nervous system may still signal alarm. Old patterns may still arise, but your response is sovereign. You are aware of the impulse, but you are not enslaved to it. You act from a place of composed authority, not reflexive reaction. Others respond differently, not because you have changed them, but because your presence reshapes the field. Your calm, disciplined awareness radiates outward, influencing interactions without effort. Power has never been external. It never came from avoiding difficulty or bending circumstances to your will. It comes from enduring the instability, observing it, and choosing alignment repeatedly. Every moment you practice this, you transform tension into insight. Chaos becomes information, not enemy. And the internal authority you cultivate is permanent, resilient, unassailable. Principle 5. The crucible of transition. Here is the stark, undeniable reality. The old version of you, defined by comfort, habits, and familiar coping mechanisms, must die. Not partially, not symbolically, completely. Its remnants will cling if allowed, sabotaging every step forward. Old behavior. You preserve the self that was safe, predictable, and numbed. New behavior. You allow the old self to burn, to crumble, to fall away. You step into the fire fully, knowing that exposure is the vehicle of transformation. Think of it like a phoenix in a crucible of its own ashes. The flames are terrifying. The heat threatens to overwhelm. And yet, through the destruction, a new form emerges stronger, sovereign, aligned with reality rather than illusion. When you embrace this principle, instability becomes not an enemy, but a gateway. Every wave of discomfort signals that the old scaffolding is gone. Every familiar coping mechanism that arises is acknowledged, felt, and released. You no longer resist the collapse. You understand it is creation in disguise. Others will sense it. Not in words, not in action, but in presence. Your reactions are sharper, your awareness deeper, your authority internalized. Discomfort is no longer mistaken for failure. Chaos is no longer feared. The internal landscape is reorganized, and the new you is permanent, not built on pretense, not patched with avoidance, but forged in the crucible of awareness. Every step from here forward is not reactive, but deliberate. Every decision flows from sovereignty, not impulse. The old self is gone. The new internal authority reigns.